Hi everyone, how are you doing? I'm Laura from Allegro Conspirator and today we're going to be talking about voices. That was really high pitched. As you probably know, there are many different voice types for singers. And I'm going to be talking about the more sort of common ones today, maybe some of the more sort of uncommon ones as well, and just giving you some examples and maybe try to explain it a little bit. This is not absolutely set in stone, so the notes that I'm talking about is not set in stone, and you'll find a lot of singers can sing across a couple of different ranges as well, like they can reach slightly lower or slightly higher than the notes sort of said here, but the notes are saying is more sort of the comfortable range for someone who would class themselves as a certain voice type. You will find as well a lot of singers will overlap in different voice types, where they might be able to sing in both alto and soprano range, but what you would class yourself as would be where you're most comfortable, where it comfortably sits in your voice. So let's get started. We're going to start from the lowest to the highest type of voice. So the lowest type of voice obviously is male. Most of the time you do get female basses as well, but we're very, very rare. But actually the first one I'm going to talk about is a contrabass or a basso profundo, also sometimes called an octavist, just to confuse you. I usually go for basso profundo just because I prefer how it sounds, but contrabass is also widely accepted. So a basso profundo is someone who can sing lower than the bass range I said about octavist. An octavist is usually someone very common in Russian opera and that sort of things, will be a contrabass singer who sings an octave below the bass line. So a contrabass will be able to sing anything lower than, say, an F2. And I would say sort of an F2 or an E2 is sort of the lowest comfortable note that most basses can sing, and a contrabass would go lower. So the only one I can think of in sort of popular music who's well known is Till Lindemann from Rammstein. One of my favourite bands, yes. So although in some of their songs, like On a Dish is a good example, he sings probably more in the sort of baritone tenor range. If you listen to some of their other songs, especially in the backing vocals, I think at one point, I can't remember which song it was, I will have to find out and I will put it in the comments. I should have researched this before I started recording, really. One of their songs he is singing at a C1 or a B0, I can't remember, in the backing vocals, which is ridiculously low. So moving on to our next type, which is bass, which is probably the lowest that you've heard of at all. So a bass can usually sing from around an F2 or an E2 to an F4, which is the F below middle C. Again, can extend either side, higher or lower, but that's probably where it sits most comfortably in their voice. So the two examples I could think of for this type was in sort of popular music, because it's by no means popular as such, is probably one of the sort of rarer voice types to find in, especially in pop music, but obviously there's a lot of opera and some musical theatre stuff for basses as well. But the two examples I've picked are Barry White and Louis Armstrong. So go listen to them, you'll see what I mean. So the next one we're going to talk about, the next one up, is a baritone, and you've probably heard this term. So a baritone is a little bit weird because it kind of sits in between the bass and the tenor, which is our next one. There's a lot of overlap as well, but one of the key things to be classed as a baritone is more about the tone of the voice as well. It's just slightly darker than a tenor. A tenor voice is usually a little bit more brighter, especially in the upper register. So I would say a baritone range is probably from, say, an A2 to an A4-ish, give or take, that again can overlap. So the two sort of popular people I thought of for this were George Ezra and David Bowie. Two completely different voices, but also kind of explains the whole tone thing, even though they do sing higher than the A below middle C, it's all to do with the tone with a baritone. So the next one on our list is tenor, which is probably, in popular music, I would argue, one of the most popular male voice. And you do also get some females, like myself, that prefer to sing in tenor range, but we'll get to that in a minute. So a tenor range, I would say, is around C3, which is the C below middle C, up to around the C an octave above, so a C5, yeah, a C5 or maybe a B4, the B below. There's not, when a lot of tenors get up to that top C range, the C5 and above, because there is obviously some tenors that can sing higher without going into falsetto. It usually starts to get a little bit strained, and you have to be really careful not to kill your voice. So there is literally so many tenor voices in popular music. You just need to look up famous tenor voices and there's a whole list of them. But the two that I've gone for as my examples are Matt Bellamy from Muse and Brendan Urie from Panic at the Disco, just because they're both completely different voice types as well. I'd say Matt Bellamy has a lot of vibrato going on as well, and is slightly a different, well, a very different tone to Brendan from Panic at the Disco. So the next voice one is we are finally into the female voices now, is an alto or a contralto. So a contralto is basically an alto who can sing a bit lower. You do get people like myself, I class myself as a contralto profundo, kind of like basso profundo. I can sing a lot lower. My sort of typical comfortable range is more that of a tenor than anything. You do get some weird people. So when I sing, I usually sing men's songs just because it's so much easier. But anyway, so an alto's range is the lowest of the female voices, and it's roughly from around a G or an F3, I'd say, maybe more of a G. In F3, yeah, anyway, the G or the F below middle C up to the C5 of a tenor, or maybe the D5. I find personally when I get to that top C, my voice goes very strained, and I usually have to go into my head voice around the sort of A4. So yeah, that's just me. Anyway, the two examples I've come up with in popular music is Amy Winehouse and Adele. So the next one on my list, penultimate one I should say, is a mezzo-soprano, or otherwise known as a belter. Again, so this is the middle of the female voices, and again there's a lot of overlap in range between alto and soprano. Again, like with baritone, the difference is very much the tone. So belting is a type of singing where it's very powerful. It's a particular way that you have to do it with like breathing and stuff, and I'll probably do a video on it at some point. It's all to do with the tone. So even though a mezzo-soprano probably could reach the top C, C6 that a soprano could, the tone would be completely different. I find I can just about reach that top C as an alto. Come mezzo, I'm more alto really, but I really have to go some and get some power behind it to get it to come out properly, whereas a proper soprano could sing it quite softly and sweetly, and it's the same with a mezzo. So a mezzo's range is around, I'd say, the A below middle C, so an A4 up to the A5. So 2 octaves basically, and a lot of this would be belted in their head voice. Belting is when you basically sing notes that should be in your head voice in your chest voice, which is stronger, and it's all to do with your breathing and how you go for it. So my two examples that I come up with are the wonderful Idina Menzel and Demi Lovato. And last but not least, we are at the last one, the highest female voice of all, which is a soprano. So if you're a classical singer, there's definitely a lot more solos and things written for sopranos. The altos, we get all the boring parts. Anyway, so a soprano's range would go roughly from the middle C up into C6, top C. Again, when we're talking about, one of my examples is Mariah Carey. For this, obviously she can sing way higher than that in what's called the whistle range. You do get some men, kind of like Vitas, the guy that did the ha 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 ha. I'm so bad at that. Anyway, he very much has control over his whistle range as well, and it's just a particular technique to get those really high notes, and it's a really hard technique as well. Anyway, so my two examples are Ariana Grande and Mariah Carey. So I hope you found this video informative. If you've got any more questions, please just pop them down in the comments and I will answer as many as I can. If you're interested in any other type, you know, people that have these types of voices, it's so easy. Just Google search like famous sopranos, or, you know, famous sopranos in non-classical music if that's not your thing, or anything. I've tried to pick more popular people just to kind of, because if I go off on classical people, there's a chance that a lot of people won't know who they are without looking it up. So anyway, as I said, that's it from me today. I'll have a new video soon. Take care. Please subscribe. Thank you. Bye.